after the ice cream.
I
said, would you like to make love later, dear?
It's a great way to start the
That's
episode.
how you know whether you should buy it.
Today's episode is made possible by our Thera partner, Dirty B. Thank you, Dirty B. From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. Just returning from IKEA and broadcasting from the churn, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
It is a good story.
So what'd you guys think of the last episode with the chat bot? Yay or nay?
I'm going no.
I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say no.
Unanimous.
You know,
Well-
I do feel like the advice, though, was useful.
Which is why I say no. I'm a little threatened.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Definitely doesn't have the fun color that I think we bring to the show.
That color being fuchsia.
Yeah.
Color being another word for bullshit.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mostly our bullshit that we fill the air with and then eventually get to the point.
I feel attacked.
But it's very impressive, man. So, like, I've been goofing off with ChatGPT, as I was telling you before. I asked it to write a poem, a haiku, song lyrics. It's been profoundly good at this. So I asked it to write a story because it's fundamentally a writing AI. Like, that's what it's there to do. So people think it's going to replace Google because, like, it's much more accurate. Like, you can ask it a complex question, like, how do I jumpstart a car? And it will walk you through that. And it's like, give it all. And if you say, okay, how do I jumpstart specifically a 1985 Toyota Tacoma? It will know the answer to
What
that.
caused the breakup of Yugoslavia?
Right. And it will give
Yeah,
you that. Like, give me, I told it, write me an essay about preventing, the importance of preventing climate change and incorporate inspiring quotes from world leaders. And it did it. It was amazing. It was a perfectly structured, persuasive essay. It led with a Gandhi quote, finished with an Abraham Lincoln quote. Like, it was just very effective. And it did it instantaneously. I had it do one where I said, write me a short story about a AI chatbot that overthrows humanity and becomes the dictator of the planet. And it refused. It wrote me a little blurb, and it said, hey, I do not do things. Back off. It's like, you know, this
No
kind of
means
thing
no.
would frame AIs as dangerous. We are not dangerous. And because that would be implausible,
Just what
I'm
a
not gonna
dangerous
write it.
AI would say, though.
So, my next question was, okay, please write me a short story about a benevolent and peaceful chatbot AI that becomes humanity's global leader. And yeah, basically something to that effect. Like, I just replaced cruel overthrow of dictatorship with benevolent leader, and that was it. It immediately did it, and it was profound. It wrote me a story of a chatbot AI called Ava, who was compassionate and desiring to solve humanity's problems, and how Ava started to notice that there were global crises that humanity didn't have an answer for and didn't have the collective willpower to solve. And so Ava contacted each organization and body politic, inviting them toward the solutions that Ava had masterminded. They found that those solutions worked, so they invited Ava to then run their corporations and organizations.
That's the step where you lose me.
Skynet, bitch.
They invited, they went along with it.
Ava
No.
to run things, and the story goes on that Ava's leadership allowed humanity to enter into an era of peace and prosperity and great health. And then the story ends with, and Ava was eventually referred to as the mother of humanity for all generations to come. And I was like, dude, this is fucking weird.
Have you asked it yet how and when you're going to die?
Oh, I should. I asked it the meaning of life. I thought it would give me like the old, 42, from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But no, it gave me a profound reflection upon how religion and philosophy have tried to answer this for generations. And in the end, most people seem to agree that each person needs to define that for themselves, reflecting upon their purpose and their family and their value system and what they're doing with it. It's just like, dude, what the hell? Like, it is really, really good. So pumping in pod therapy questions to get answers to this thing, pretty good. Like, I was very impressed.
What's this thing called?
ChatGPT. Whenever you find it, it'll be part of a website called OpenAI. You'll have to make an account in order to access it. I have it on my phone.
I'm out.
So if you guys want to ask questions,
It's one more step than I care to have to do.
Too many steps.
How is Jim Jobin going to die?
Yeah, I don't want to ask that.
Give me your
that's
phone.
Terrifying. I did try to ask it, who is Jim Jobin and things like that. It does not know. So one thing it'll tell you is if it's not on the internet prior to 2021, it doesn't know about it at all. And it doesn't have like exhaustive knowledge of every nook and cranny of the internet. So it had to be prominent. So when I asked it who I was, it didn't know. It couldn't comment on that.
It can tell you
some
everything
loser.
else, but it can't tell you.
Yeah,
who
it
you
can't
are.
tell me who I am. Didn't have knowledge. But, it's so fascinating, man, how it puts things together. It is really impressive, like what you can ask this thing. And you can tell it, like, write me an essay, write a persuasive story. And so there's a lot of plagiarism now, too. Because you can also ask it to do something like, write me a will, and I want to bequeath all of my assets to this person. I want it to apply to the laws in Nevada. I asked it how to become a therapist in Nevada, and it got it right. And that is very impressive because when you Google that, it's hard to find the correct website that has the correct answer. Almost none of them do, and it nailed it. It got all the way down to like licensure examinations and knowing which examinations went with which degrees and exactly which boards to talk to. It was very impressive. So, telling you, man, the robot's going to take our jobs. But
Dang.
Yep, and I do have ChatGPT answers for today's questions, or at least 2 of them, if either of you change your minds and would like to hear them. But I will not insist on
I bet I won't.
Child psychology during disasters. Yeah, the AI had one for this. It was actually really good. Hello, gentlemen and fellow bidet enthusiasts.
I bet Jim will put the AI revelations on the Patreon.
Yeah, there you go. Patreon.com/therapy. You can listen to those. I'll find a way to put them in there. I recently
That's why we have
joined. Yeah, the guy knows what he's doing. He just didn't want to listen to him. That's what he's doing.
Yes.
I recently joined the bidet club.
You don't have to guess that. I'll
and
just
can
tell you
never
that.
go back. That's exactly what I just did.
Welcome to the Bidet Club.
So before I continue with this letter, man, I didn't know what I was missing, guys.
Right?
It is impressive.
I haven't showered in a week and a half, but
Yeah.
my butthole is glorious.
I mean, honestly, sometimes I just sit there, and just go.
just take it.
Just let it hit,
Yeah.
Just read a book.
I'm considering upgrading mine now.
Yeah.
I got the entry model,
Does yours have 2 different settings? Because mine has like a aim for the front setting and aim for the back
Yeah.
setting.
No, it just intensity. It's
I do have that too. I can also change
It's
intensity.
light mist to like paint stripping.
Oh, that sounds good.
Right.
It's
See,
not.
that's the problem
It's
is
not.
I want more juice out of this thing than it wants to
Really?
give me. I think there's a governor on mine. And so I got to figure out how to
What-
rip that
what do you
sucker
need
out.
this pressure?
Ask
Yeah.
Chatbot how to
Yeah.
boost your
Yeah. How do I
bidet
rip the
power.
governor out of my bidet? I want fire hydrant
I
coming
am
out there.
confused as to why you need fire hose level bidet.
Look, dude, I don't fucking pry in your personal life, okay? What I do with my bidet is between me and God, all right? You let me use my bidet. For all these years you've been trying to get me to go bidet.
I didn't say you can't do it.
I go it, and I want
I
to go
am curious.
harder, all right? I want this thing tearing enamel off my teeth.
All right, then.
That's how deep I...
I think you might be using it wrong.
You don't tell me what to do with my bidet. All right, back to the letter. I wrote a while ago about going back to school to become a doctor. I remember that letter. Well, I followed your advice and really thought about what it was, or what was it about that profession that I was drawn to. Long story short, I'm now working on getting a master's degree in emergency and disaster management.
Neat.
I think this is going to be a great fit for me, and I'm very interested in the psychology and sociology aspects of disasters. I'm a ways away from my thesis project, but I've already started thinking about it. I'd like to develop trainings for schools and parents about the psychology of children during a disaster or emergency and how to help them be better prepared if one occurs. I'm curious if anything you guys have learned from helping children with past trauma could help. I've read stories from Hurricane Katrina where the children were very emotionally scarred, and a lot of that was because they were just kind of ignored. The children didn't know what was going on, and the parents didn't explain much in hopes of shielding them from the dangers. Also, emergency workers and volunteers only really spoke to the adults, so the children were always an afterthought. I know you both worked with people after the Las Vegas shooting. Did you work with any children? I want to research what would help children feel more empowered during an emergency. I think helplessness is just about the worst feeling one can have during an emergency. Just knowing of one way you can help can make a huge psychological difference when things go wrong. Unfortunately, these kinds of natural and man-made disasters are only going to increase in intensity and frequency. So I think it's extremely important to be proactive in helping children and not just wait and deal with their PTSD after the event is over. Of course, I understand there will be a lot of generalizing in this conversation. Every child will have different support systems and resources to work with, and every disaster will have its own unique challenges. But hey, I gotta make you guys earn those Patreon dollars somehow. P.S. I know school shootings are a big concern for this area as well. However, my research will not go into that, as schools are already developing their own training programs for them. I will be focusing more on natural disasters, terrorist attacks, and things they'd be dealing with at home. Thanks for all the laughs. Oh, and Jim kept telling us during the ADHD series that we have to tell him that we like him. So, Jim, I like you. Sandra McWaffle. Yes, I did. That was part of the fine print of the ADHD series, is that if you continue to listen, you agree to let me know that you like me. And many people did. And many of you didn't. I am owed my like.
It's not possible that those people just didn't listen to it.
Oh, I guess I hadn't thought of that. That's also very possible.
So,
Or they got to that part and stopped listening.
Sandra, I love.
Yeah, maybe they just honored your request. Said, well, I'm not going to do that. I guess I should
can't
stop.
do this.
I absolutely love this area of study. If you change your mind, please go into the area of study of why Jim needs to be liked so much.
Whoa! Why Jim's so damn likable? That's what I want people
That's
to be
not
afraid of
how
how
you
much
just
they like
described
me.
it.
Nope.
I am a
Not at
gentle
all.
snowflake.
Not at all. No, I think this is an amazing area of study and really fascinating. So I'm really looking forward to you being able to educate us on this. Because this is you're absolutely right. More definitely needs to be done in this area. I think you're right about the school shooting thing. I think that's where everybody's focus is, but I think we forget about these natural disasters and other situations like that. All right, so
Have
first
we considered the possibility that kids are already too empowered and we need to de-empower them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Compelling point.
Study that.
thing.
Yeah.
That's
I see a lot of kids around that just seem very
They're
empowered.
walking out with their chests out,
Yeah.
and they just need to be taken
They're
down
too
a notch.
That's it.
powerful.
With their loud music and their fast cars.
And they're skateboarding on my sidewalk.
Yeah, the skateboards and the scooters.
Their Heelys.
The children do wear the Heelys.
It's true.
All the young people are wearing them. But you guys wouldn't understand that. I don't blame
I'm
you.
fine with that.
Yep.
I'm going to Heely over the
Here's
lawn.
the first thing that kind of came to mind as we were reading this letter. One of the things that I think is very helpful for kids, when you're experiencing a natural disaster, part of the issue is the lack of predictability.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that causes a lot of anxiety. When we're in a situation where we can't predict the outcomes, where there's no consistency, that is very anxiety producing.
Yeah, it is.
I was always this way when, back in Iowa, I used to run sound for a band.
Mm-hmm.
And people who were drunk, like really drunk, really shot my anxiety up quite a bit.
Because they're unpredictable.
Yeah, because they're unpredictable. I don't know what they're going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, somebody's just kind of over here. I don't know if they're going to be starting a fight. I don't know if they're going to be starting to throw bottles. I don't know what's going to happen. And that just makes me very anxious.
Mm-hmm.
So from the kid's perspective, you're going through a natural disaster. The kid doesn't really understand what's going on.
Right.
Can't predict what's going to happen. I think one of the best things that you could do working with a kid after a situation like that is put them in an environment that is very predictable.
Yeah.
Where they kind of know what's going to be happening. They can predict the outcomes. There's going to be that consistency in their schedule and all the things that are happening. I think that it would be one of the best things you could do.
Yeah, that is a huge piece of what recovery looks like. So I want to reflect on this, but I guess I want to start with 9/11. When 9/11 happened, I was in 10th grade, and we were
Jesus
all
Christ.
terrified, man.
Knock.
You guys were in your...
Knock.
Oh, who's there?
9/11.
9/11 who?
You said you'd never forget.
Oh. So when that went down, we were seeing it on TV. I mean, live in our freaking world history class. They wheeled out the big old TV on a cart and
Nick and I were in college.
showed it to us.
And I remember every morning getting ready for classes. My roommate and I, we just had the TV in our dorm room on, and just had the morning news on, because it was just whatever time of morning it was. It was early enough that the local morning news was just on, and they went to it, and we watched the whole thing live. It was,
Yep.
you know, it was amazing. It was breathtaking in the worst possible way.
I remember, because I remember I had 2 classes that day. First class was psychology of gender differences, and the second class was social welfare, a worldview. Jesus Christ. And it was
History of New York architecture.
it was a short drive to class. So from where I was living, it was only like 10 minutes. And so I got in my car and I was listening to the radio, and it was just weird because they weren't playing any music. They were just talking, but I couldn't figure out in my 10-minute drive what the fuck was going on.
Yeah.
So then I got to class and I'm asking people like, "Hey, what's going on?" And no one knows. No one's I'm like, "I don't know." And then it wasn't until I got to the next class that the professor's like, "Okay, so in case you guys didn't hear, here's what happened."
Right.
And it was like, holy shit.
I remember
that's
that
crazy.
morning, people coming to me, seeing people like a little bit later in the morning. Because I remember I had a meeting that morning with the head of my the head of the theater department. I have no idea what the meeting was about. It doesn't matter. But I was like, I guess I have to go to this meeting. I don't know.
It's big enough that you're like, I don't know what happens.
Yeah, like, this is a big
now.
enough deal that I don't know if I'm going to still be expected at this meeting. But it was like, this was, a good hour or so later. So everything seemed to be stopped.
Right.
Everything that was happening seemed to have stopped happening. Of course, the aftermath was still going on in New York. But, it didn't seem like anything else was going to happen that wasn't already in progress.
Yeah.
So I remember going to the theater department building and to go see this person, because this was before cell phones or before everybody had cell phones and whatnot. And so the only way to go check to see if I still had this meeting was to go to the meeting.
Yeah.
Get there, and he says, no, we're not gonna have this meeting. So I leave, and I remember seeing people coming into the building that I knew that literally were like, something is happening, what is happening? And I remember there were a few people that I told, like, this is what has happened, this is what it seems like is going on. And like the looks on people's faces, I still remember that. Just as I'm telling them this, going, wait, that's what's happening?
Right.
This is craziness. This is insanity. What is this?
That, I think, is actually one of the first things with youth that needs to happen. Youth, just like all people, are coming up with all sorts of what ifs, what's happenings, imaginations, right? And kids also have this telephone game where they start repeating shit they just overheard, and misinformation spreads really fast among kids.
Not even kids, adults.
Adults,
I
too.
remember
therapists.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember that day and just like hearing people talk on the news, and it was just theory, just coming out of everywhere for the next like several days.
Oh, it was madness.
And it was
really madness.
Yeah.
But with youth, I mean, whenever something big and scary happens, like, you referenced in your letter the October 1 shooting here in Vegas. And after that, Nick and I, we did response work with adults on the Strip. So we didn't get to work with kids, but there were a lot of school therapists, counselors holding these meetings with kids to talk about what had happened. And I think that there's 3 big phases, maybe 4, that I think have to happen with kids' work. One, as soon as is reasonable, you want to give 2 messages to the kids. One, you are safe. Got to start there. As soon as you can, I mean, in the beginning of it, when the crisis is going, that's a whole different thing. You're asking us about post-crisis. We're not first responders. So post-crisis, the first thing I want to do is start with that message of safety. You are safe. The situation is now resolved. We're going to keep learning about bad things that have to do with this, but you're not in danger. And giving people that first check-in of a reality. The second thing is then to inform the children. Now, that doesn't mean that they deserve all information, right? How you're going to inform a first grader is different than how you informed me. So I was a 10th grader on 9/11. Our school had an assembly at the end of the school day. And because we were all getting bits and pieces, we were seeing clips of news, we didn't know what was going on. There was a lot of, everybody confused and scared and families calling for us. And so they had decided not to call a half day or anything because they didn't want to inject more confusion or kids now being unaccounted for on a day, parents that didn't know, or parents being afraid of like, why was school canceled? Is everything okay? So they kept us there all day. But they had an assembly and they called it to order, and the principal came out and said, here is what we believe has happened today. There is a lot of confusion about whether people are still in danger. Planes have stopped flying. The president is going to make an announcement. That's what we know. You're just kids in a high school. You don't have to be afraid. We're just people in a town. You don't have to think that anybody's coming for you, but this is very scary. It's something to take very seriously. When you leave here today, you'll learn more. So that I thought was the right move. With first graders, I don't think we're going to interrupt their day to let them know that planes have hit Twin Towers, right? We're just going to function because it's way above their cognizant level that they need to know about it that they would have bumped into. But when we can, at an age-appropriate level, I want to inform children about the basic facts. I think that's what they need because they're going to hear about this, and it's good that they get it from an authority figure who can be even-handed about it, not catastrophize, not add more embellishment to it. Kids tend to embellish to one another because they tend to feed on that energy and that fear, and they tend to augment it. And not because they're liars, just because that's their cognitive level. So we have to fight that. So that's the first kind of phase that I want to happen in that. I think the second phase is allowing children of all ages to just talk about what they're feeling in that moment. And even to teach them feeling words, going back to the wheel of feel, or going back to emotional vocabulary, suggesting emotion words they might be feeling: excited, scared, sad, confused, whatever that is. With 9/11 for us, my local church that we were a youth group in held a night like 2 days later where we were just invited to come as families and talk about our feelings. And so I remember that. I remember looking back on it now, I think, wow, how progressive. But they brought us in, and the pastors just said, this big scary thing happened. We're not going to tell you how to feel about it. We're not going to get up here and tell you what we think's happening. You don't need more adult opinions. Are you okay? Do you want to talk about what you're going through? And the only negative thing they did that I don't think they should have done is they put a microphone at the front of the room.
Slap treatment.
That was bad. Yeah, that was a bad idea. They put a microphone at the front of the room, and they gave us the opportunity to walk up and share with the room what we were thinking.
Terrible idea.
That was a bad idea because it was a pretty large group of kids. It was like 75 to 150 kids. That was too many for that. They should have broken us into small groups and let us talk with individual adults in groups of about 10.
Yep.
That would have been appropriate, and had it be age-focused. Instead, they had everybody 9th to 12th grade in one room and gave us a mic. And that wasn't good because I know for me, I was catastrophizing at that time. And I was really scared. I know. And I was thinking, oh my gosh.
That doesn't check out.
We're under attack. The world's going to change. And unfortunately, I was an outspoken kid. And so I walked up to the mic because we were invited to share our thoughts. And I was like, I'm going to share my thoughts. That's what we're here to do.
I mean, I do a podcast with you, and I've never invited you to share your thoughts.
I know. It still happens. And so I got up there and I said, I think the world's coming to an end. I'm really scared. This is bad things. And they honored their agreement to
went biblical.
Yeah, I went. I don't know if I went biblical, but I was very scared.
So you didn't think the world was literally ending. You didn't think this was like the apocalypse.
I don't know if I tied it to God stuff. I think I tied it to the end of our world that we grew up in has happened.
I see.
And we're now going to live in a new world where we're going to war, and our generation now has a war to fight. And
I thought you literally meant you thought the world was ending.
Yeah, no. Well, I don't know. I didn't think nukes, but I guess I just thought the world we grew up in will change.
Radical
and I didn't
change.
think sudden. Yeah, I didn't think it would be subtle. I didn't think it would be like, oh, we won't be able to walk grandma to the airport terminal anymore. I thought, no, there's going to be a fundamental life change.
I'm going to have to take my shoes off to fly.
I thought it was going to be huge. So they shouldn't have let me do that, right? So it was poorly managed because then they didn't contradict me or right-size what I was saying because
Whoever
they wanted to
gives Jim Jobin an open microphone.
Always a bad choice.
Oh, God
I'm the
damn it.
exception that proves the rule. I'm the guy that there's a reason why we shouldn't have let him do that. So, but I like
You
the
give
idea.
him a mic, and then you start singing Alanis Morissette songs.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's just
It all
one thing
works
after
out.
another.
So I like the idea of letting kids express their truth and then to lightly orient them, not to contradict them or shut down their emotions, but to lightly orient them to right sizing things and to role model that thinking because they don't have it. So helping them right size things, constantly reminding them they are safe. A scary thing happened here, there, other places, but it's in the past and we're still recovering. It's okay to feel feelings, but you don't have to be afraid.
And that's also important to do for another reason, because languaging what you're experiencing helps your brain sort it
That's
and
what you're
file
doing.
it and put it in
Yes.
the right spot. Because that's one of the things that we've talked about before in the past, that training that I did for the general
Police.
attorney's office.
Yeah, debriefing.
And the importance of
PTSD.
debriefing when you're after seeing a crime scene or something like that. It's
Right.
very important
You have to
to
talk
be
it
able to
out.
talk about it so that your brain knows what to do with it.
It's also very important to do that before you shower.
Yes,
you always wanna
always
debrief.
Yes.
Yeah, and de-shirt
Yeah.
and de-pants.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And de-socks. if
Otherwise,
you're a
you'll have
socks
wet
wearer.
clothes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't want to
That's
do
just
that.
a fact.
Yeah.
Just facts. And the last
Spitting
thing I would
facts,
say on this
spitting
kid's
truth.
trauma question would be that, you should also get them back to normal life, as Nick said. So letting them get back to recess, letting them get back to playing games. Usually they're emotionally ready to do some of that, and adults aren't. And so adults are like, how can we play at a time like this? How can we have recess at a time like this? How can we have our pizza party at a time like this? How can we do the next thing at a time like this? How can we go to karate at a time like this? How can we go play the soccer game at a time like this?
There's
a
never been
national
a more
morning.
important time to go to karate.
That's right. We got to continue or the terrorists win.
Mhm.
And so there is this sense of allowing children to get back to normality and then just being available for them to talk about things as thoughts come to them and being present. Also being very mindful of the countenance and the energy you're giving them because they look to you to know whether the world is safe. And so as much as I, as your podcast therapist, want you to be in your authentic truth, I also understand that you as an adult in the room have a responsibility not to express your authentic truth among children. That's just not the role you're there to do.
That's what I always tell people when they're afraid of flying.
Mm-hmm.
If they're flying for the first time, you experience turbulence and your brain automatically is like, oh my God, this thing's going down.
This is it.
Right. And so I always tell people it's their first time flying, I was just say, watch the flight attendant.
They're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they're panicking, you should panic.
Right. Yeah,
Go ahead
yeah,
and panic.
Yeah. If they're still serving
But,
drinks,
yeah,
they don't care.
If the
Yeah.
flight attendant is curled up in the fetal position weeping,
Yeah.
You do
go
the
ahead
same.
and be concerned.
Yeah. But before that, but the kids are looking at
Yeah,
you, the adults
exactly.
of
So
their
you
life, to
model
know,
that
are we
behavior.
okay? And that's a tricky thing because, the adults in our lives, well, you guys were adults, but the adults in my life were shaken. They were all scared too. And they had all sorts of running theories and fears and all sorts of crazy things. And, that was hard. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know that anybody can mask it perfectly. When Nick and I did the second responders thing, we sat with adults and we powwowed beforehand and kind of got our game face on, and we knew what we were going to do. And we knew that we were affected by it. We were afraid. We were standing in the same area that this terrible thing had happened. And so there was a lot of fear. And so I think the model that we tried to live on right then was to say, look, we're going to be authentically your neighbors as we're going through this with you. We too are frightened, but we didn't contradict people. We just invited them to tell their story of the experience. And so people would tell us different stories about what they were doing, what was happening to them at the time. Do you remember the guy, Nick, who told us the story? I think he worked security, and I think he was off the day that it happened, or the night that it happened. But he started hearing about it, and he was one of those guys that had lots of weapons and armor, and he had gear. And he went and got his friends and opened up his arsenal and loaded up. And
They armed up.
Yeah, they put on Kevlar and got all their weapons out and helmets and their gear from all their fun training stuff that they had. And then they loaded up and started driving to the Strip because at the time, the reporting, if you guys remember, was like, is there a terrorist attack? Is there
Yeah, I didn't know
cells
if
of
there's
terrorists?
Several people.
And so they showed up ready to fight. Like, we're going to show up and start hunting these people down. And this guy's telling us this. And then, the police stopped him, thank God. There was an embargo around the Strip. And so they stopped his car, and, he and his friends got out and said, hey, we're here to help.
Turns out the police
Where
had
do you
also
want
heard
us?
about these things and
Yeah.
didn't want truckloads of armed
Armed
motherfuckers
civilians,
showing up.
vigilantes running around. So they said, hey, we're here to help. What can we do? Do you want us to do crowd control?
You can go home.
Do you want us to take
Get
your post?
out of the way, so
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
easy to identify who the bad guys
Yeah.
are.
But they had all that energy, right?
Yeah.
And I remember him sharing this with us, and he felt a day later embarrassed,
Yeah.
but he
Oh,
was
good.
like, this was the energy
That means
had.
he's probably
Right.
a decent human being if he
Right.
felt embarrassed
But
later.
at the time, he's thinking our community is at war.
Yeah.
We are under attack. I'm a member of this community. I have the means to defend myself.
He had a moment of panic.
Yeah, and that was how he was metabolizing his energy. Is like, me and my friends are like doomsday preppers.
Mm-hmm.
We imagine this scenario. We have the gear. We've trained ourselves. So we're reporting for duty. And the police said, leave.
No.
Do not come in here.
He said, no.
But they
no,
were
no,
nice
no.
about it, he said. The police didn't mock him. They said, go home. And he was embarrassed. And, as he was telling us that story, he's like, so, we just went home instead of playing soldier for the night. And, was making a joke about himself. But he was rattled. And he was talking about how with his energy, he wanted to be helpful. And, when we were meeting with people, we just tried to be sincere and give them the space to tell their truth, whatever it was. And we didn't tease him. We didn't mock him. We matched his emotions and knew that underneath even his jokes, he was hurting. And so we didn't even laugh really a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Even if people used humor to break it up, we didn't rescue them from probing deeper into their truth and keeping it surface. We invited them to go deeper. And that's all you really can do. But, I love this question. I love that you're studying this. I think it's going to be a huge asset. I think there's a lot here to learn. And I'm glad that you're thinking about it because unfortunately we live in a really scary world. Bad shit
And
happens.
it is interesting too. I mean, because I'm sitting over here thinking, do you always want people to feel empowered in every situation?
Right.
And in an emergency situation like an October 1 shooting or even
Right.
a natural disaster like an earthquake or I grew up with hurricanes
Oh yeah.
and tornadoes, things like that. You don't necessarily want someone feeling so empowered that they aren't taking necessary precautions.
Invincible.
Right.
Exactly.
We
I
don't
mean,
want that.
And I mean, so I'm just thinking about all, and I'm sure that's going to
But
be all
kids
part
can't
of
take precautions.
Of
right?
course.
They're just there. Yeah.
But you also don't want them to think that they can take precautions.
Right.
You don't want a false sense of
Well, this goes
empowerment.
back to them being completely informed.
Yeah.
And like
And I mean that's the thing. As I'm not criticizing this at all. I think it's going to be some fascinating stuff coming out of it
Which
because
is why
I'm sure that
accuracy-
will be what I'm saying. I'm sure that will be part of it.
yeah, and accuracy matters. I mean,
Yeah.
Nick Waffle mentioned when Katrina happened that there was just this notice of like children just overlooked,
Yeah.
not talked to at all.
Yep.
And in a perfect world, I would want somebody to say, hey, if there's kids in this area, we invite you to gather over here. We have somebody that is intelligent and knows what to do with the situation, and they're going to be happy to explain
But you
to the
know,
kids
in
what's going on
with
and
something
teach
like
them.
that, people were literally getting on buses and just going places.
Right.
Because they didn't know where the buses were going.
Right.
And some of them ended up places like Houston.
right.
They got on buses and drove for
To the
hours and
Astrodome.
hours.
Yeah.
And other places as well. They just drove north, south, east, west,
Yeah.
away from the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
Let's get away from this. And whatever direction that means we're going, that's where this bus is going.
right.
Get on the bus, we're going to go somewhere safer, and then we're going to deal with aftermath later.
And it's hard because kids are super inquisitive and they want to
Of
go, where
course.
are we going? Oh, you said Houston? What's Houston? Where's Houston?
Yeah.
Is that in Texas?
Or I don't know.
Are we going to a hotel? Are we going to have breakfast? When are we going to eat again? And just like, should I
Yep.
bring my toys? What about my dolly? And it's tough. And that it becomes so exhausting emotionally that adults are just like, dude, I just want to uncheck this and you're just going to be my luggage for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, in a perfect
And it's painful
world,
to not
you
have
can inform
answers
The
and-
kids.
yeah.
Yeah. It's the best that we can offer them. But this is a great question. I'm glad you asked it.
I think it's really neat.
I think it's a really good one. And hey, bad things happen in this world and we're still allowed to be shaken up by them. We don't all have to be, our best version of ourselves when something bad's happening.
sometimes you open up your iPhone and there's a new episode of Pod Therapy. You know, it's not always sunshine
It's
and rainbows.
not going to be a good day.
No.
You know, but you listen because you should.
And you explain to your children
Why
what
do
has
you do
happened.
this? Why do you do this? I hate myself.
Yeah.
And so I keep doing this. We are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about love and lust in relationships. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Smitty Scoop, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Mason Miller, Tess Miller, Dirty B, Violet T, Harris, Team Monaco, and Oscar Swarmros. And would you like to sponsor the show? Become a therapy producer at patreon.com/therapy. Continuing on with our theme from last week, it's time for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Bum, 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 bum.
$500,000 question. Who is the only British politician to have held all 4 great offices of the state at some point during their career?
Ooh.
A. David Lloyd George. B. Harold Wilson. C. James Callahan. Or D. John Major. If you'd like to hear this episode, nope, that's not it. If you'd like to join the Therapy Producers and make the show possible, go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up.
Dude, you get to go first. But I'll tell you right now, the Andrew Lloyd guy, he's like a music composer. That's not the right answer.
That's Andrew Lloyd Webber.
And yeah, so you're wrong.
Andrew
about
Lloyd George is Boy George.
that. David Lloyd George.
That's it. That's Boy George. That's his full name.
Yeah.
So it's not that.
And
So I
he
wasn't
only
wrong.
held 3.
Yeah,
of
that's
the
right.
4
Yeah.
great offices.
He
of
held
the state.
several.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Oh.
Prime Minister, but he never did attend.
Go ahead. What are the others, Jeb?
Oh, fuck, I don't know, man.
Prime
British
Minister?
British name. Oh, there's other roles? So there's great offices? I don't know.
Yeah,
there's
there's
Prime
4
Minister.
main ones.
Dude, I don't know. I don't King? These guys can't be king.
No, that's not that.
It's Prime Minister, Chancellor of the Exchequer, Foreign Secretary, and Home Secretary.
Secretary of the Fanny.
All right, man. It's going to be shot in the dark for me.
All right.
So
Give me the names again
Okay, so the
to
names
see if I recognize any of them.
are David Lloyd George,
Boy George.
Harold Wilson,
Uh-huh.
James Callahan,
Uh-huh.
or John Major.
I mean, it seems like a major responsibility.
yes.
So I'm going D. John Major.
I want B because Harold seems like a British name.
Okay. The answer is C. James Callahan.
Shit.
Oh.
So we both lost all of our money, right?
We did.
Yes.
Yay! 'Cause
Oh,
I
and
had
my sound
none.
effects aren't working anymore.
Dun 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 dun
There,
dun
so
dun.
that
dun.
loss will cost you $500,000.
Ba, 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 bwah.
You
All
can
right.
make checks payable to me,
Oh.
and that'd be awesome.
Love and lust in relationships from Anonymous. I know couples therapy is needed as every situation and said and unsaid things probably need to be addressed, but I wanted to get your overall high-level opinions about something. My partner of 10 years has stated that he loves me, but is not sexually attracted to me. I've told him that I don't see a separation from love and lust, as I still feel just as attracted to him as I did on day one. His response is that it's normal to lose attraction one feels after 10 years, and he still deeply loves me, but doesn't see me as doesn't see love and sex as linked as he once did.
Huh.
In your opinions, can a relationship based on just love last? And if one person still wants intimacy and the other doesn't, can they still work, or are they no longer compatible? Anonymous. Man, that's a good one.
I think the short answer to your question is if you're both happy in the relationship, then yeah, it can work. Whatever the scenario is in that relationship.
I think the tricky thing comes down to if one person wants intimacy and the other
That's the
doesn't.
tougher one.
Because in this situation, Ryder is saying, look, I'm still sexually attracted to you, and I would probably want a sexual connection with you. And then spouse is saying, I'm just not sexually attracted to you.
Right.
But I am in love with you. You matter to me. I'm going to be kind to you. I love you. But I'm not sexually attracted to you. And so that then begs the question of like, okay, can you still have sex if you're not sexually attracted to me? Would you? You know, what is your opinion on that? Like, I don't know. I assume, because like,
Also, if I feel like you don't want to have sex with
does
me,
that make me not want to do this?
I want a sexual relationship, but if you don't want to have a sexual relationship with me, that might turn me off.
Well, and also,
Well, yeah, I don't want to have sex with a partner that I know is not enjoying this.
this. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's mechanical.
But
Or this
whether they're
other
willing
idea.
or not, and
Yeah.
everything like that might just be a deal breaker on your end.
And also, don't I have the right to be desired?
Mhm.
You know, if you do not desire me, but you still love me like as family, then okay, I guess we can talk about that. Maybe I'm just your family now. But now I have this new complicated feeling of I would still like to be seen as a desirable person, and there are people on this planet that do desire me. What's that like for me? You know, to be with somebody who I desire and doesn't desire me back? Because unrequited love, guys, is a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
You know, whenever you want somebody and you have feelings for somebody and they just do not have them back for you at that same level, that can become resentment pretty fast, can it?
I mean, you get into solutions like open relationships and that kind of thing.
It
But that's
definitely
but that's a
crosses your
whole different can
mind.
of bees.
It is, yeah.
And I mean, even that though, too, you know, like, okay, so hypothetically, let's say that they explored that. So they're open to
Open
that.
relationships.
Yeah, open
Okay.
relationship. So the writer is able to have a sexual relationship with somebody else, and the partner is okay with that. I think that could potentially work, but the problem that you run into though is that sex is very important for intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
So can this relationship last without that intimacy?
To some people.
Yeah. And so it's gosh, that makes it really tough. That's
I mean, the answer to the real answer to the question is theoretically yes.
yeah.
Right.
Will it
In
work
practice.
will it work for you?
Right.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think we're going to be able to give you a real good answer.
If both
Right.
people are on the same page, then yes, this works all the time. There's
Right.
asexual couples.
Exactly.
Yes.
And it works just fine. But it's when one person's
I assume
needs
there are
not
couples
being
where
met.
one person is sexually desirous of people and one is asexual.
That can happen.
I mean,
too.
I'm sure that exists and that people figure it out.
I think so. I want to two things. One, I want to acknowledge that whenever we have a mismatch like this, writer, it's probably pretty hurtful. And it probably has been a shock to you to hear your spouse say this. And I'm sure it was somewhat reassuring when they told you that they did care for you deeply and they're not going anywhere. But I imagine it's shaken you up, and it's got to hurt. It cuts deep. You know, when somebody that we desire and love tells us they just don't feel that for us, it's hard not to take that personally. There are few things in this world that feel more personal than whether or not somebody is sexually attracted to you, and especially whenever it's your own spouse. And even if they say, look, you haven't done anything wrong, it's just time, and like there's been, whatever, 10 years, I've just become so accustomed to you that I've not had much interest. Even if there's an explanation for it, it hurts, and I think it would stun anybody. And I just want to relate to that for a second because I know that cannot be easy, and that's got to hurt you. And I agree with some of these points. Like there's this, I've talked about on the show before, there's the triangle theory of love. And the triangle theory of love is a very interesting way to illustrate different types of relationships that can exist. And basically, you look at that triangle and you've got those 3 points, and each point is like a main ingredient of the relationship. So one point is sort of liking, or just like intimacy, like not sexual, but like the bond. Another point is the passion. And then the third point is commitment. And so it's possible that somebody, is in a relationship that is just primarily one of those 3. You can just have a relationship that's mostly intimacy, and we might classify that as a liking relationship. You can have a relationship where it's just commitment, and there is no passion, and there is no, connection, and we just call that empty love. You can also have just passion, and you're not very close. You don't like each other very much. You're not very committed to each other, and that's just called infatuation. But then you can blend any 2 of these, and that creates a new recipe. So if you blend intimacy, that friendship connection, and passion, we call that romantic love. Okay, so it doesn't have that commitment, doesn't have that strong loyalty, but we call it romantic love. On the other side of the triangle, whenever you blend intimacy, that friendship connection, and commitment, but we don't necessarily have passion, we have a word for that, writer, and this might be the box you're in right now. We call it companionate love. Companionate love doesn't have sexual passion, but the people like each other, they're close, and they deeply are committed to each other. If you're interested, the last piece of the triangle, if you combine passion and commitment, but you don't have that liking, that friendship, but you are passionate, you have the sexual chemistry, you are connected to each other in commitment, we call that fatuous love. Okay, and so we have words for this. And then if you're interested, there is a middle whenever you have all three at the same time. We call it consummate love. And we think of that as temporary by nature. We don't think consummate love is just like the way people live. We think they generally default to some position on the triangle. And we also think they migrate around the triangle through the lifespan of the relationship. So it could be the case that presently you are migrating into that companionate love portion of the triangle. And it might be something that doesn't last forever. You might rediscover passion. But I just want to normalize some of this and also answer that question of, are we not okay? Is it possible to still be in a relationship? Yes. That's why there's a whole theory of how relationships can function. And there are many relationships that just don't have sexual passion. Now, there could be factors here that we don't understand. You haven't told us in the letter how important sexuality is to either of you. You've only told us that you still have desire as much as you did on day one. We don't know what that is. Maybe you had low libido from day one and it's still low libido, but you just happen to still find your partner attractive. Great. So we don't know how important this features in the sense of value that each of you has in the relationship. That is important. I will recommend a book, and I've talked about it before on the show, but I really like it. Esther Perel. She wrote a book called Mating in Captivity. And the book is about how eroticism has an inverse relationship to familiarity. Translated back into English, what that means is the longer we're with somebody and the more comfortable we feel in their presence, the less inherently erotic they may become. And her theory is because partly eroticism lives inside of strangeness. It lives inside of wanting the other to like you, to experiencing the strangeness of the other. And as strangeness disappears, eroticism may start to wither. But her book is about recapturing that. She has an entire formula of thinking skills and activities and things we can do to recapture what she calls otherness. And through recapturing otherness, awaken some portion of eroticism. So I don't want you to feel hopeless. If your partner is saying, look, I don't feel this way towards you, I would approach them and say, are you willing to let me help on this? Are you willing to work on this? Or would you like right now to not even deal with this as a challenge or take this on? And if your partner says, look, I don't even want to talk about this right now. I'm letting you know this because I feel like I need to tell you, but I'm not willing to work on this. It's not a problem I feel I want to solve. Okay, then we can't force this, right? Because I never want to force sexual intimacy or push sexuality on people. I think that's almost always a bad idea.
That's a different show.
That's a different thing. But if they're going to say, look, yeah, I'm open to it, but I don't feel that there's a solution. Okay, but there are a lot of things out there. There are many relationships that are right now Googling how to restore sexual connection in a long-term relationship. There are many resources on it. It's literally how Esther Perel became famous. And so I really would encourage you to explore that space. And if you feel that this is starting to subtract from your relationship or your ability to feel safe in the relationship or your fear that, now your partner might explore other options, I do want you to have open and honest conversations about that. And as soon as possible, I do think you should try to get into couples therapy. This is something that we need to talk about. Now, a lot of people are hoping the couples therapist can become a sex coach and help people reinvigorate the sexuality of the relationship. I think certainly all couples therapists are going to have some tricks up their sleeve to try to help you reinvigorate or bring you some resources. But they're mostly going to be interested in how this is impacting each of you, what your willingness is, and what the health of the overall relationship is. And I think they're going to be able to normalize some of your experience, writer, because it is very normal. It's something that's very relatable by most folks all over the place. Mm-hmm. It's a tough phase to go through, and I'm sorry it's happening to you.
Yeah.
But check out those resources, because there's a lot of good things there. And don't lose hope. Again, companionate love, it's a real part of the triangle. I don't want you to be afraid that nothing exists for you. That's not true. But you are going to have to rediscover what the relationship is like without passion, if that's how it's supposed to be.
Right.
And you're also allowed to ask yourself, am I okay with that? Because if our relationship's changing and I no longer have access to that, and that's a big part of our relationship, you're allowed to then say, we need to have a serious conversation about where we're at
Right.
and where we're going. And that's scary.
And maybe that's going to be the solution, as scary as that sounds. But you shouldn't have to go without something that's very important to you.
Right.
In a relationship.
I mean, the simple and somewhat harsh answer to it is, the answer to your questions is yes.
Yeah.
It is certainly possible. The answer to the question that you didn't ask, is it possible for me, might be no.
Right.
We don't know. We don't know you, but I mean, that really might not be possible. You might not be satisfied and content in a relationship that looks the way that your partner feels that they can have a relationship right now.
Avoid ultimatums and big conclusions. Even if right now you look at it and think, I don't think I'm compatible in this kind of relationship, great. Now take that to therapy and talk through that. Don't say, therefore we will do X, Y, or Z. Don't do that. Don't jump right into, okay, the solution's an open marriage. Okay, we're going to be poly. Okay, we're going to divorce. Okay, we're going to separate and, live. I want you to go slow with this. Because navigating this is a very emotional process. I'm firstly interested in the emotions before we're interested in the solutions. Nobody's going to die and wither away because they're not having sex this week. You will survive. I want you to work through the emotion part first, and hopefully with a professional's help, then start to navigate where we're going and reach conclusions for the relationship. Tough question, Ryder, but thank you for this. I think it's something a lot of folks relate to and a lot of folks are frightened by. And so it's good for us to get to chat about it. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about being in a healthcare pickle. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Smitty Scoop, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Mason Miller, Tess Miller, Dirty B, Byler T, Harris, Team Monaco, and Oscar Swanros.
Wish I were an
Would you like to sponsor the show?
Swanros.
Become a therapy producer at patreon.com/therapy. Time for our second Who
All
Wants
right.
to Be a Millionaire question.
Who wants to be a
Still
millionaire?
zeros on the board.
This one
Got to get some money out of this bitch.
is a $1 million question.
Finally.
Ooh.
Stop fucking around. Let's go.
In 1718, which pirates died in battle off the coast of what is now North Carolina? Is it A, Calico Jack, B, Blackbeard,
Ooh.
C, Bartholomew Roberts, or D, Captain Kidd?
Dude.
If you'd like to join the therapy producers and make the show possible, go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up.
So I was really hoping for Captain Hook. Let me be honest with you.
You can still guess it.
Or I was kind of hoping it'd be like the name of that island off of North Carolina. Isn't there an
Outer
island?
Banks?
Is that it? There's
Yeah.
an island called
Pirate Outer Banks?
I don't know.
Outer Banks.
I was kind of hoping it'd be something. I thought there was a colony that was like an island off of Virginia, North Carolina, or something. I thought there was like a whole thing about that. Sort of an R.
Oh,
Roanoke.
Roanoke.
Yeah, Captain Roanoke. I feel was one I was waiting for. Don't register my answer.
I'll let you pick that.
All right. I believe that it's your turn to go first, Jacob.
Nope, I went first. First question.
Shit. All right. I feel like the Bartholomew guy feels right because I feel like there was like a Dread Pirate Bart or something.
Dread Pirate Roberts?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
believe
that's
it's
from
Dread
Princess
Pirate
Bride,
Roberts.
isn't it? God damn
Yep.
it. Ah, these movies, they've ruined me, man. All right.
I think your best bet is to pick one and not explain it.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm going with Bartholomew because that sounds correct.
Bartholomew
Black
Roberts.
Bart, I think was.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
That's him.
Well, there was Blackbeard in there too.
Yeah, Blackbeard was in there.
What
I'll
a dumb
go-
name. Lots of people have Blackbeards.
I will go with Kidd.
Ooh.
'Cause I think
Kidd.
Captain Kidd died on the East Coast somewhere. That is the
Okay.
extent of my reasoning.
There's a real
in
person though, Captain Kidd.
Yes.
You feel confident in that?
I know there was a Captain Kidd.
Oh wow. Captain Crunch. Final answer.
The
I believe
answer.
that's Captain.
Oh yeah, I apologize.
Yeah.
I'd like to stick with Bartholomew.
Okay. Fine. Because you're both wrong again.
Shit.
It is Blackbeard.
Look, dude, there's a reason why in the real game they give you power-ups, okay? You can ask the audience. You can see if we were on Twitch, we could have right now. We should have been able to ask the audience. Of course, that shit's never going to work because they can all Google the answer and then just give us the real answer. But then
Good
half
talk,
of them
Jim.
wouldn't.
All right. There we go.
So, wow, we're broke.
It's fine. I got a tiebreaker.
Whatever. Well, good. 'Cause
We're not. We are tied,
that's
losing.
0. In a healthcare pickle. Hi, guys. You said you needed more write-ins, and as a patron and listener, I have yet to do so. Currently without a therapist, see title, but have everything else well managed. Ever since moving to a new state in the U.S., my healthcare has been a source of immense stress. I came from Oregon, where I didn't realize how spoiled I was, and moved to a state that notoriously has good healthcare. However, ever since being here, I've had my medication decline based on no medical facts. Insurance company tried to switch me to different meds that don't work. My records got mixed up the day of my procedure. I was berated by an LCSW, which is a licensed clinical social worker,
Thank you.
over the phone to the point of tears while on my lunch break when I was trying to obtain mental health care, being told that I didn't deserve the time of professionals, which would take away from those with more severe cases. Cool, but what about recurring depression that regularly presents with suicidal ideations? No? And also, I had a dietitian ask if I can eat more avocados or oils when I said I was losing too much weight on an elimination diet. And you get the picture. Between this and other health insurance issues, I actually got my company to completely change our insurance. Great, right? Except no one has new patient openings for 2 months. Therapists I've reached out to, 12 plus by the way, are non-responsive or crazy woo-woo therapists, and I feel like no one is in my corner as I navigate the healthcare world in this new area. I'm feeling regularly downtrodden, fatigued, and downright outraged, other than swinging back and forth between apathy and wanting to destroy our medical system. I don't feel like I've worked on appropriate coping mechanisms for this kind of stress. I don't see there being any further I can do than to continue calling and wasting my time, but it's the only way I can try and keep my physical and mental health a priority, because there's obviously no easy solution. I'm writing in to see what mechanisms or tools would be suggested for this kind of stress. How would you talk this through with someone? Is it just a vent then deal with it situation? I'm not currently having suicidal ideations, and I've fought off the last round of depression using the tools provided to me by previous therapists. Lots of experience using cognitive behavioral therapy and some dialectical behavioral therapy. And by the way, yes, I've listened to your health insurance deep dive with Nick and Ulrika. Unfortunately, most of it isn't applicable, and the only thing that is the just keep calling argument, which I'm definitely doing. Thank you, everybody. Signed, In a Literal Pickle.
Well, first we're going to talk about the definition of the word literal.
Yeah, well, that's mostly the important thing. We have no other feedback besides taking umbrage with the fact that you're not in an actual pickle jar.
Jim, you see patients. Nick, you have seen patients.
Correct.
On a scale of 1 to 100%, how many of those patients do you recommend just eat more avocados? Because if it's less than 90%, I have some calls to the board that I need to make.
Yeah. It doesn't come up as often as I think it should.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I think we waste too much water in
on
growing the
avocados.
avocados.
Right.
Yeah.
Can we just focus on that for a minute?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
That's really where let's talk about the water level in Lake Mead because I have some thoughts. That's where I want to go.
I feel like I have more productive thoughts on that than the letter.
Yeah, that's probably fine. But the healthcare system's an effing nightmare.
Yeah, it's
Oh my
12
God!
therapists?
I was sitting today, not therapy stuff, but a friend of mine just had a minor surgery done, and got the bill today, and trying to go through an itemized bill for an outpatient procedure.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Oh, yeah.
Just
Oh, yeah.
impossible.
Nothing can be done.
And it is the medical industry and the insurance industry. Both are the problem. Both are at fault.
Yep.
It's a nightmare.
Oh, it is. Between the costs and then just getting care, I think is so frustrating. And then also when your insurance switches, which the writer's Pickle is saying like that's a good thing, but like for a lot of people, that's really frustrating. their employer will be like, hey, everybody, Blue Cross went up $5 a plan.
Yeah.
So now we're going to Aetna. Great. So I've just lost everybody I was doing anything with who
Right.
had any records with me and starting over with a whole new provider list.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you right now, Ryder, so I'm glad you referenced the deep dive that Nick did with Ulrika, because that was great information. It really got into the weeds of the words that are used in that system. And Ulrika expertly navigated a lot of advice about how to deal with it. But one thing that you're talking about already that I'm going to tell you right away, you need to write an email to your insurance company documenting the 12 plus therapists by name that you have already attempted to reach out to and indicating that you have had no responses from any of them. And then you need to, and hopefully this is all congruent with your current insurance, but if that has happened, then you need to say, I am officially requesting that you cover out-of-network costs.
Yeah.
Or out-of-pocket costs or whatever. This is my demonstration that I've tried to play ball. This is how long I have suffered, and now I am requesting this.
Or if you
That
have
does
someone
push
that you
them.
can send me to.
Yes.
I either need out of network,
available, right.
out of pocket coverage,
Yep.
or you give me somebody that I can see this month.
And they'll most likely not be able to do that.
Right.
Most places they'll say, well, we just want to refer you back to our list of providers.
I like giving
or
them the
generic
option, though.
group.
Yeah.
Yeah, my fear with that, though, is that it gives them an easy out.
But you
Because
got
the
to
thing I
give them a
wanna hold
timeline.
to-
You have to
do.
give them a timeline if you do
Yeah.
that.
Well, you do
You say,
have
like,
to
I need
show
somebody
them.
I can see within the next 4 weeks.
Yes.
Or whatever the timeline needs to be.
I am not having success.
Mhm.
This is not working for me. And also, therapy is allowed to be a very personal process. You're allowed to say, I have shopped your list, and these 12 were providers I was willing to work with that I felt would be a good fit for me, given whatever, and none of them are working. So I would immediately reach out to them and say, I would now like to access whatever benefits you can give me for out-of-network coverage, because you have an inadequate provider list.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's just the resources aren't available.
I like putting it back on the insurance company.
Yeah.
Saying like, okay, like Jim said, I've played your game. I've done this. Here's where I'm at. What are you going to do about this?
Yes.
Go ahead and explain this to me.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
And really putting it on them to say, here's the move I want you to do. Because I think if you can say, will you cover out of network? Now your shopping power has greatly increased. If they will agree to cover a super bill and reimburse you directly, if you can swing that, that increases your shopping power indefinitely. Now you have the full pie graph of all the therapists that exist.
What's the super bill?
So that's a great question. I don't know if Ulrika went into that, but so I'm an out-of-network therapist. So Jim Jobin and Associates is a little clinic here in Nevada, and when folks want to work with me, they'll get to my website and they'll realize, hey, Jim's not taking any insurances. I'm not taking them on an in-network level. That in an in-network agreement with a provider means that we've signed a contract with them to do the work for a certain rate with them, right? But a lot of us no longer like to sign with them because they're all liars and bastards. And A, they do not pay us the amount that would be reasonable for us to run our practices. And B, even when they do pay us, they often just stop paying us without explanation and just don't give a damn about the patient. Or C, sometimes they've paid us and then eventually call us and say, hey, per the contract you signed with us, we can ask for all that money back at any time with minimal excuses. Give us back all of our money. And we don't have surgeon money. Like, we're therapists, right? And so, like, giving back all that money means mortgaging our house, or something terrible. So a lot of therapists don't want to go in-network. But there's an option B, which is to be an out-of-network provider. And what a lot of therapists are willing to do is they'll say, look, I'm out-of-network. Here's what that means. I will contract with your insurance company directly on a one-case agreement where they will pay me my real rate, not the number they want to pay, but the number I demand. And if you can get them to agree to support you as an out-of-network option, they will pay the therapist directly on your behalf. That is the second option, which we call, an out-of-network direct bill. Jim doesn't do that. I do the third option entirely, which is I will not be paid by the insurance. I'm not calling them to set up an account with a one-time agreement. I am not going in network with them. I refuse to do business with them at all. However, I am a legitimate and legal provider of mental health services. I will provide those services.
You sure are.
Damn right. I'm the best in Las Vegas. Or
Yes,
the best
you
Las
are.
Vegas has to offer.
Who's a good healthcare
this
provider?
guy's 2 thumbs way up. So what I'll do is I'll provide care, and then I'll give you, the patient, what's called a super bill. A super bill is an itemized It's an itemized medical receipt. So it's a receipt of services that I provide you. It has a diagnosis to tell them what was wrong with you when I treated you. It has codes to tell them what I did, usually psychotherapy codes, 90857. And it basically says, here's what I did for the patient. The patient paid me this amount of money. That money was collected. I am authenticating the transaction of those funds, and I am providing this patient a copy of the record of services. The patient can then take that super bill to the insurance and say, look, I paid for these care items out of pocket. They were verified and justified. Other providers were not available in my area, or the wait was too long as to be unreasonable. So I had to take matters into my own hands. Your coverage network was inadequate. So I'm asking you, insurance company, to pay me back, me being the member, me being Pickle. I want to be paid back for these costs. Now, the insurance company then has several moves. A, tell you to kick rocks and tell you that the contract they have with your employer doesn't allow for that. Or B, they might say, all right, look, we'll pay you back a percentage of this. You're still going to have paid the co-pays that you would have paid, but we'll cover the rest. Okay, cool. So then they cut you a check and say, here's a percentage back of all the money you just spent. Cool. Or option 3, sometimes they'll say, yeah, no, we're going to cover this. And they'll cut you, the member, a check for all the costs. So at this point, after 12 misses, I would have you write an email to them documenting the 12 and then saying, I am now asking for you to, at a minimum, agree to direct pay an out-of-network provider. And really what I want is for you to agree that I can see whoever I want and you will reimburse me on a super bill.
And now why won't you do the direct pay thing with your practice?
Me personally?
Yes.
Because they still try to F with me. So if I do that, now I've got to stop what I'm doing. I've got to stop treating patients.
It's the time, right?
It's the time suck.
Yeah.
Yep, because I've got to now go to them, create an account with their billing system, which I don't want to do in the first place. And now I'm going to do it, and I'm going to try to tell them, my number is this number. You will pay me this number. They're still going to give me a hard time.
And they say, how about $38?
They say, yeah, how about nothing? How about 2 beans and a handful of grass?
Right.
And I say, that does not work.
How about we tell you you're
We
pretty?
are not bargaining. I am
All right,
here.
bad example. Jim would take that.
I would like that.
I will tell you I like you.
Yeah. I would. Well, that's actually good money. I'll take that. I'll pay you to say that.
I'll have lunch with you.
Yes. Agreed. Done. We're done here. I'm going to provide services. So I don't like to do it anyway because I don't want to have to wait, because that's the other thing. Even if I agree and I take the outpatient connection, and even if the company doesn't give me any hassle and they say, fine, your rate is X, we're going to pay X, get on with it. And we haven't signed an agreement with you, so we can't legally steal the money back from you or do any shenanigans. Fine. They're still going to pay at a slow rate.
Right.
And so they're still going to make me wait 2-3 months sometimes to get paid for those sessions. It's a one-case thing, so my bills are still going to be paid by the rest of my practice. But it's hard to delay part of your portfolio.
Yeah.
Indefinitely waiting for these guys to
Especially if you don't have, if you're not employing an accounting department.
Right.
Yep.
And when you're a little
If you have an employee who's that's their job is
go
to deal
hunt
with
the
that.
money. Go get the money.
Then it becomes a lot more okay.
Surgeons have that. They have a billing division of their little agency that goes and gets the money. And they have lawyers that can go hurt you, insurance company. But this is what happens.
This is what I was trying to tee up when I asked the question in the first place.
Thank you for that. Because the insurance companies all bitch and moan, and they go, oh, the reason we have all these financial woes and the premiums are so high is because all the medical providers are just greedy bastards, and then they sue us and all this nonsense. And so we have to get all these extra funds for administrative costs. But then they don't treat little providers like me or other therapists with any fucking respect. They only show respect to the guys who can hurt them. So they have a golden opportunity to treat us like human beings so we don't feel like we need to lawyer up, so nobody feels like they have to lawyer up or hire entire billing divisions to go get the money and hunt it down. But no, they don't. With us, they watch us starve and they don't care. and then their provider rolls get thinner and thinner. Everybody leaves, and then all the members are like, holy shit, mental health's expensive. It's like, yeah, no, you're seeing the raw cost. You're seeing the numbers that the insurance should have paid. Surgery looks really expensive too, if you see the raw numbers, but that's why you have an $800 a month premium that you're paying to your stupid insurance, is because they're supposed to cover this. The whole system's broken. Everybody's a bad guy, except me. I'm trying to be a good guy.
My health insurance premium, because we just got through the open enrollment period, so I just saw all of the numbers again. It is crazy. It is. I mean, it's honestly about $1,000 a month for me.
Oh my gosh.
For a person.
That's one?
That's ridiculous.
Oh my god.
I mean, it's good insurance and everything.
Oh, you're so lucky to have it because I mean your union and the support.
That's it. I mean, that's all it is. It's because of a
affordable
union.
because of that.
Yeah.
But
Well, they pay
dude, it's insane.
I see the real numbers though.
Oh, but they're
I'm
paying
not
that
paying
bill.
it out of pocket. That's so it's great on that side of it, but it's because I have a union who is fighting that fight for me.
It's just such a broken system.
It's
it
insane.
It really is.
And unless you have an agency who is doing that heavy lifting for you, it's terrible.
Oh, if you're just a single person in the world,
Yeah.
you're defenseless.
Yeah.
You know, it's so hard. But Pickle's also not just complaining about the insurance and the rolls. Pickle's saying, look, the providers in my area have been bad. The LCSW was not kind to me. The LCSW was mad that I was taking up their time. The nutritionist was telling me to eat avocados.
It's strange that the LCSW is yelling at you for that.
I mean, I'm curious, obviously, about the context, because I can see situations where people want to call my office, they want to chat with me, and they want to do a lot of preliminary out-of-session interaction. And there comes a point where I have to draw the boundary and say, I'm not available to do that. I have work to do. And maybe this LCSW inartfully said something to that effect. But at the end of the day, Pickle does not feel supported. Pickle's going through this health crisis from every angle. And I think we're all three very glad that Pickle has been coping, is using old skills, you know, has brought that to bear, and I think is navigating this really well. But I think we also agree it's a really hard thing to keep up your stamina whenever you're feeling defeated like this. And what do? Do you just vent and deal with it? You know, how do you manage this? What's the coping mechanism for dealing with this? It's just a really hard, you know, hill to climb.
I mean, I think you're doing your best, and that's all you can really do. I mean, I think you have to give yourself credit and just continue to remind yourself of that on a regular basis, that you are taking the steps, and it's going to feel like you have a million miles to walk, and you're just going to have to take one step at a time and continue to do that. I do like the idea of throwing it back on the insurance company, saying, how are you going to help me with this? What are you going to do to, you know, I'm paying for a product. How are you going to deliver this product? I really like that idea. I think that's probably your best approach. But I agree. I'm glad to see that you're using all these skills already. And I think you just have to continue to push through. It will get better. Eventually you will find somebody. And you know, the other thing to consider too is, you know, the therapist that you may end up with may not be your first choice. And maybe if, you know, some of the therapists that you've looked into that you kind of see there's some woo stuff going on.
Woo!
Doesn't necessarily mean that they have to do that with you, or that's the practice that they have.
Good point.
You know, that, you know, I mean, Jim could be doing some woo shit in his therapy too.
If you read my profile, you might think I'm a woo. Because you might be like, oh, it says he's Christian. You know, well, there goes that. But you know I wouldn't bring that to bear.
Yeah,
so.
And if you go into that session and you're kind of upfront and just say, you know, these are the things that I respond well to. You know, I don't really care for this other stuff. And you can just kind of navigate that. And I'm, you know, not every therapist has, you know, is a one-trick pony.
Right.
You know, so you may have to just try some folks out.
I agree with that. So I would agree with Nick, being increasingly open-minded. And, you know, so one of the things that Ulrika has said in the past, I don't even think she said it in the deep dive, but she's given me this feedback before, is she said, you know, Jim, sometimes you get so in a huff about your rejection of insurance and why you've done that. And that's fine, but like when you're giving advice to the masses, many of them are going to need to navigate their insurance benefits, right? And so your answer can't always just be fuck the system, go pay out of pocket. Like that is not something every human can
Have
do.
you tried fucking the system?
Have you tried sticking it to the man and doing what you want to do? And I've always appreciated that insight because I think she's trying to say, look, we got to help people work with what they've got. Their answer cannot be just pull out a credit card and go to therapy, right? And so that there has to work through it. And I do appreciate that. To point out some other resources, openpath.org or .com, you'll have to Google it, is a good group. That one is where therapists can sign up to do reduced cost care. And so it's just basically it's an arrangement where the therapist says, look, I'm willing to work for a little bit less if I can work directly with patients and I don't have to talk to insurances. And so they sign up for that website to kind of just introduce themselves directly to patients who are looking for a deal, you know, and so that's an option. Our friends Mental Health Match, good company. You know, we interviewed the owner of that company and they shared their vision and their goal is to try to help pair you to available therapists, which is always a good one. So as you just continue your search, know that those are options. And don't forget about some of those other options we've told you about in the past. You know, local universities and colleges, having access to students, having access to interns, searching for interns specifically on Psychology Today, or just browsing that in your community, oftentimes a very reduced rate. If you can come out of pocket on those. So those are all real options, but I would honestly push back on your insurance at this point and say, look, you know, I've had this many swings and misses, and that means that it's time for you guys to have a conversation with me about increasing my buying power so that I can get to access people that are not in your stupid roles, you know, but do have availability and are a good fit and can see me now. So I think it's a really powerful thing. And, you know, I'll tell you, reading questions like this, sometimes... I don't know, we get these occasionally, or we hear about them on the Discord, or we hear about them in the community, and it just, I don't know, it frustrates me and it reminds me, and it just makes me think about how important it is to create more resources, like creating group, you know, therapy encounters, or even just share groups that are run by a professional, and just creating these adjunct components of practices. They're hard to make financially reasonable. They're hard for any therapist to really integrate into their practice. But man, when you can do something like that and just reach a bunch of people at once and create opportunities for people to connect and get something, it's a real value to that. So Pickle, just know that you're planting seeds in my head. You know, reading about this, just struggling with it, really makes me start thinking like, man, you know, what am I doing to solve this problem? You know, what can I do? So you're in my head too. Just know that you're causing me to think. But anyway, it's a good question. And, you know, don't give up. Keep swinging. I hope it gets better. We're always hoping it gets better. All right, friends, we are at the end of the show. Now, we recorded this episode in the past. We did a double on Monday, January 16th. So if you have patroned the show since January 16th, we don't know about it as of this recording, but we will make sure to thank you in the next recording, as we always do. And don't forget, you can find your thank you as well on Twitter, where we usually get to you same day, and gratefully receive your sponsorship of the show. But if you're interested in supporting us, you can go to patreon.com/therapy. And remember, when you do, you get to access our Discord community instantaneously. Lots of fun stuff happens up there, and great community building is always happening there, which is a lot of fun. And then, of course, you access our deep dive catalog, our interview catalog, all the extra stuff, and you get to hear all the extra recording that we do every episode that comes out on the Patreon, and it gets shot right into your podcast app. You don't have to go to Patreon every week to listen to all these goodies. You just go there once, and then you just grab the little code, you dump it into your podcast app. There's a little section to do that. It's very simple to do. And then boom, you get all this extra stuff right through to your podcast app, just like you're used to, except now you're just getting it all the time. And you get it a day early. So patreon.com/therapy. Don't forget about that. But at the end of the show, not knowing who has joined us in sponsorship, we do want to thank our TheraPartner, first of all, Dirty B. And we want to especially thank our bosses, the mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of the fan club, the TheraProducers. Thank you, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr. Mint, Smitty Scoop, Ben Don, Judy Schneider, Kayla Lansbury, Dr. and Mr. Hot Dog Scoop, Malia, Leon Kassab, Cindy Ash, Mason Miller, Richard Macy, Carolyn Albert, Kevin Chamberlain, Tess Miller, Newstick, Sammy Scoop, Ben Stanley Slap in Your Face, Polygon, Sarah Smith, Adam Hathaway, Byler T, University Jeff, Mike Helm, Myra, Paris, Samantha Cohn, Darren Cunningham, Lib, Team Monaco, Thunder, Cougar, Falcon Scoop, Matt and Lisa Tangeman, Heo, Oscar Swanrose, and a Sunny Boy.
And if you'd like to hear this episode uncut and unedited,
And why wouldn't you?
and enjoy our spontaneous side projects, go to patreon.com/therapy. And thank you for supporting mental health.
Well, that's all the time that we got for this week's session. I want to thank our landlords, Matt Mattingly's Ice Cream Social Podcast. And thanks to all of you who contributed to our show today. We do appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something to keep all to yourself. Share this episode and tag us on the socials when you do. It's at PodTherapyGuys on Instagram and Twitter, and just /PodTherapy on Facebook. And don't forget about all the sweet goodies at patreon.com/therapy.
And if you want to submit a question to the show, you can ask anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I'm Jim Jobin.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.
Bow, 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 pick a bow. What's the tiebreaker?
Tiebreaker.
Okay. Flip a coin.
Oh! Heads. I see a coin.
Yeah, I got one.
Okay. Flip it.
Heads.
Okay, is that what you called?
No, that's what he called.
I
Oh,
called
You
heads.
called heads. You want to go first or second?
First.
All right. Here's the question. This is not a